So I saw one of the interviews you did where you were standing outside in the park, I think, somewhere.
It's so cold.
Yeah, I wasn't going to suggest that today.
We were talking about that on the way. I was like, wow, at least this one's indoors, so it's kind of...
Yeah, that. What time of year was that one done?
About this time of year.
You're kidding.
Yeah. 2 years ago?
Cool.
2 years ago? Was it 2 years?
I hope it's a fast one.
Not fast enough. I mean, my brain, I could actually feel my brain hardening up. You know, like it was just, capillaries were just absolutely horrible.
Who did that to you?
Oh, local news, copied a statement, WUI. I'm gonna take this off for sure because it's distracting. Okay, cool. It's okay. Normally I wouldn't matter.
Why won't he look in my eyes?
Yeah. Keeps looking at my shoulder. It's weird.
Sorry about that. I don't want any distractions.
You guys are heading to DC after this?
Yeah.
You guys got over there. You go to the Grassley group over there?
The Grassley group.
Oh, Senator Grassley.
Oh, no, actually, we're hoping to talk with Kurlikowski and Holder at some point.
Oh, okay.
This is going to be more going to labs.
Yep.
Just sort of.
Gotcha.
Show like this, you can never have enough lab shots.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah. You gotta get some white coats in there. What's the last piece you guys wrote down? What's the last piece you guys wrote down?
They do a series called American Greed.
Okay.
That's kind of the bread and butter piece, so I've
Yep.
done a lot of that.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah. Spend a lot of time on Long Island, or
Yeah.
Connecticut, or Florida.
Yep. Yep.
People-
Jeez.
Something crazy's happening, that's where it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Johnny, you probably scoot to your left just a couple of inches.
Okay. Yeah, when I first started doing this, I was doing
There you go.
mostly like
Good,
National
good.
Geographic and History Channel stuff,
Mm-hmm.
going around the world, seeing stuff, which
Nice.
is really
Oh,
cool.
that's cool.
And now it's all
Yeah.
bad guys.
Yeah.
Not this story.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was
I was
gonna
like
say-
American Greed, it's all.
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
they're
no,
doing.
no, absolutely. Yeah, when you guys are
So
first
that
coming.
came out wrong.
Oh, it's okay, it's fine. I get it all the time. No, when I first said, you guys first approached me, I heard about the show and the Crime Inc. I'm like, why are we on there? You know, we're not breaking any laws.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's.
I mean, we're
And
a
that's it.
we're a new class of criminals, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't exist before
Right.
as an industry and, you know.
Well, this whole thing has happened so fast.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just sort of blown up. And that's something that it's interesting, and I asked a couple of law enforcement, and I never really got the answers. If this was an issue in Europe, and then suddenly exploded here, why is everybody caught by surprise?
Right.
Not really having
Yeah.
no plan
Oh,
of attack.
yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of getting over it. Case of Kirsten, so I'm sucking on the
A little more over there. So, what is the process? Do you make the product here locally and then
Yeah.
package it and then
Yep.
sell it around the country, or do you sell it internationally? Is that-
Yeah, I mean, we typically work within the domestic United States, but we're the only, speaking in terms of living and switching hats,
Yeah.
we're the only organized manufacturer that actually grows the majority of our own products. It's actually grown right here in New Hampshire. So we do have a production facility, we have a fulfillment area, you know, and so forth. It's just no different than any other business you have.
Okay. Will you talk a little bit about the business side of it too, or is this more, do you want to just talk just organization?
You know, it all depends. So long as there's not a blurry line, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I most certainly, my primary objective, of course, I want to represent the industry.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe talk about 605 and talk about prohibition and so forth.
Right. Well, maybe the way to get that is just your personal story.
Yep.
How we get there, so.
Absolutely. Yep, that's fine.
I mean, obviously, this is TV, it's not like I'm gonna 20 minutes.
Yeah, here's all about Rick Broider.
Yeah.
It's fun.
But yeah, the legislation and the politics, I think, are particularly
Mhm.
important because they're so convoluted right now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And there's probably, it's easy to drum up hysteria.
Oh,
Mhm.
it's a
And I-
witch hunt, yeah,
so if I'm
absolutely.
just one shot, I
Mhm.
think it's good.
We can talk about that
Huh?
as well.
I think it's better.
There's so many other things.
That way.
There's so much.
You
So
wanna-
that too.
Oh,
And the bottom line is that our products are no more harmful than anything that the
Okay.
government's already currently profiting on.
Many-
You know,
Show it to Bernie.
it's-
I want to move the chair a little bit that way. Just let me know. No, you're fine.
Oh,
You're fine.
okay.
I'm back for you. Sorry.
Josh, we should have brought the Liberty Bell.
This one on the
yeah,
edge.
okay. Yes, someday.
Liberty Bell.
I think it's pretty good.
I told Ted if you
First
wanted to bring
comments.
any visuals,
See, you didn't tell me, I could've.
you can get that.
Okay.
Had that since your first convention, you know.
Yes, that's right, that's right. It's been with us for a
That's
long
what we
time.
have.
Yeah. I think that will work very nicely.
All right, let me just bump up his backlight a little bit. And then the other one, the standard close.
Yeah. You never know when you walk into a hotel conference room what you're gonna.
Absolutely, I know. That's why I was like, you know, well,
I was gonna still have to lobby and bring it over here, but
Yeah.
people were showing up.
There's some crazy, I don't know if it was a corporate party, what the deal was, Valvoline last night had something like that
really,
there.
Valvoline.
Yeah,
Huh.
but it was, you know, if they're fighting their way through the whole day, and you get here, and all of a sudden you walk through the door, and there's like all these, if they were 22
No
years
need
old,
to
you
meet
know,
someone.
girls
Yeah.
around their party dress.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly
Okay.
Oh, it's neat.
out, yeah. Well,
Yeah, we have a major international racetrack, probably about 10, 15 miles from here, so.
okay.
I don't know if.
So is Valvoline a big local presence?
Well,
or-
they do a lot of NASCAR sponsorship and stuff. I don't think anything's going on this time of year, but
Yeah.
who knows? Trade shows and all
So Bernie, just be aware that when you go grab your water like that, you get in the shot.
Okay, once we get
So,
going, I won't grab
yeah.
my water.
No, just move to the other side. No big deal.
that. I'll give you guys the water buffer.
Yeah.
How about the
Okay.
guys heading booth? Good to go,
I think
Josh?
we're set. Everybody, Bernie, you happy? You good? Pepe, you
I'm
good?
happy, good.
Ready when you are.
These things warm up here. All right, we are rolling. Speed, rolling.
Are you good, Bev?
Yes, I'm good,
Okay.
yes, sure.
Excellent. All right, well, let's start out with the hard questions. Get those out of the way. Can I get your name, how to spell it, and how you'd like to be identified on the program?
Absolutely. My name is Rick Broider. I'm the elected president of the North American Herbal Incense Trade Association. The last name is Broider.
Excellent. And when you say elected leader, should we refer to you as president of it, or?
Yeah, I'm the president of the NAHITA organization.
Okay, excellent. And tell me a little bit about NIA. What is it? How big is it? How did it come to be?
Sure. NAHITA is a trade association which is much like many other trade associations. We represent manufacturers, we represent distributors, retailers, and even consumers who believe that they have a right to participate in the free market. Currently, right now, our membership numbers are somewhere upwards of about 2,000, which has grown significantly in the past year since the passing of the DEA legislation.
The membership has grown since the passing?
Correct.
Is that a circling the wagons? I mean, is everybody trying to come together to figure out?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the bottom line is that, you know, as soon as people, how would I say it, I guess, when, I guess in this day and age, when most people get involved with legislation, it's usually when their personal passions are under attack. And this is what we've seen here in the past year with the passing of all the legislation, so forth, towards our industry.
Okay. And so the North American Herbal Incense Trade Association, quite a mouthful.
It is a big one. It is a big one.
What are you guys, obviously, is herbal incense, is that the main focus? Are you looking at all the different subsets. I think we talked a little bit about the bath
Yeah.
salt and some of the other stuff that falls
Yep.
into that. What is your, what do you guys?
Sure. The North American Herbal Incense Trade Association represents the industry that utilizes synthetic cannabinoids as part of their process. So really, while we advocate for herbal incense, we're really advocating for the medicinal and aromatherapy uses for synthetic cannabinoids.
And how big is this industry? I mean, how many members do you have? How many people do you think there are out there?
We have over 2,000 members or so currently now. We probably represent about 50,000 businesses, and at our last estimation last year for 2011, we've shown a rise of market value from $5.4 billion in 2010 to upwards of $7.8 billion for 2011. That's our conservative estimates now.
So again, just to kind of hit that number, because that's a pretty staggering number. I mean, this is a huge industry, 5.4 billion up to 7 billion.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, this industry is one that has been growing because people are seeking alternative relief from things that otherwise, you know, might be deemed illicit. And where we stand as an organization, we believe that people, while herbal incense products are not intended for human consumption, we do believe that it is people's American right to utilize them as a euphorant if they choose to.
And it's interesting that the industry is continuing to grow despite recent legislation and so much legislation in individual states.
Mm. Yeah, what we've seen is that there are undeniable market forces at hand here. And basically, you're never going to be able to stop a market-demanded product. So as prohibition proliferates, what happens now is the same thing that's happened historically, is that it really sends a message of, hey, take a look at this stuff. You know, this is something that is of interest, you know, to the government. And of course, people, when they're curious to find out why, you know, they're going to get involved. So prohibition really counterserves the measures that legislators are trying to create.
And for your members, are they primarily manufacturers? Are they the store owners that are selling this?
Yeah, the NAHITA members constitute largely of a good balance of manufacturers, distributors, and retailers, and a very fair amount of consumers as well.
Excellent. And just because this is CNBC and we like to hit those big numbers, can I have you say one more time again just how big the industry is and how it's grown so quickly?
Sure. Currently, right now, the herbal incense industry, we are estimating at a value of generating $7.8. Let me start that over. Currently, we estimate the herbal incense trade for 2010 to be worth $5.4 billion of annual revenue, a big portion of that which is taxable. We are seeing that in 2011, we have seen a significant growth of probably about 15 to 20%, despite legislation.
And how do you track those numbers?
The way that we track our numbers are through NAHITA actually collects survey information from our members. We do it on an anonymous platform to maintain privacy, but we compile and we send out an annual survey to find out how many people are participating, in what scope, and of course, you know, to what return, and that's how we generate our numbers.
Excellent. And the Retail Compliance Association, is that something that you're involved with, or is that something separate?
The Retail Compliance Association is another organization within our industry. They're spreading a good message. I guess the general, the delineation between our two organizations is that the retail compliance industry has a foundation behind healthcare lobbyists and legislation. So they're very pro-legislation, government legislation, whereas we at NAHITA, we've seen that volunteer regulation really works better. So if you were looking to draw a contrast, we both have a similar message in terms of freedom of choice and so forth, but the Retail Compliance Association would like to see regulation happen, which we would see as, you know, pretty much extortion, middleman extortion, and it's never been successful in history. Why then repeat that?
So it doesn't sound like you guys work together.
We do. I mean, we do communicate with the Retail Compliance Association. Daniel Francis is a good guy. We just have that basic philosophical difference in that, you know, they're more pro big government expansion within the industry, and we are, you know, we believe that industry regulation has no burden and should have no burden on the taxpayers.
Excellent. And then just to also clarify, although I do think you said it, NAHITA this is a national association. I mean, this covers
Yes.
the whole country. Is it just North America, or are you starting to expand?
Well, NAHITA actually started off as a North American platform and primarily with concentration in the United States. But we've seen immense interest as prohibition spreads with other countries trying to reach out to us to get assistance for maintaining their freedom of choice as well. So it's been a pretty interesting phenomenon.
And is your primary focus, is it challenging legislation? Are you offering support for your members? I mean, do you offer them legal support?
Yeah. Our primary goal in NAHITA is a two-pronged approach. Basically, first, we work to advocate for people's freedom of choices, and that comes through legislative, advocacy, advocacy at the retail level. And the other part of our approach is, like any other trade association, educating the public, teaching people about the scope of government, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, how they shouldn't be interfering with our market space, and also teaching them about, the dangers of substance abuse, because substance abuse is a real problem in all industries. Any substance can be abused. So we take that message forward, and we try to get people to be educated on being responsible for their choices instead of blaming tools for their actions.
Excellent. Let's back up and let's tell your story a little bit, because
Sure.
I think that's important to kind of explain. I mean, it's kind of a fascinating backstory with this, and it kind of flies in the face of, what the conventional fear wisdom would say we're supposed to expect.
Absolutely. Somebody like me. Well, myself, I got involved in the industry with my company called Liberty Herbal Incense quite accidentally. My prior experience was that I was a law enforcement officer for 12 years at the state level. I'm a Gulf War veteran, and I'm also a father of 6 boys. So my involvement in this industry is quite accidental in that we had an issue where my wife had developed Crohn's disease. And upon doing some research with pretty credible sources like the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, it had turned out that cannabinoids were purported to provide symptoms, alleviation for some of the symptoms. So I went on a personal quest to find out, if this was true, and found out that there was a lot of medical evidence that supported it. So being an engineer in nature and being operational in nature, we spent a lot of time doing some research, identifying certain compounds and certain herbs that work together to provide anti-inflammatory responses, gastro relief and things of that nature. And it turns out that it worked. So my wife now has an option to be part of a relief system that is not illegal and is not illicit and does provide immense benefits at a cost savings compared to pharmaceuticals. Otherwise my wife would be spending more than $20,000 a month to live. So that's how I became involved in this industry.
Excellent. And that's an interesting delineation here too, is New Hampshire, you said, has no medicinal marijuana. I mean, medicinal marijuana is outlawed, correct?
Right. Well, there's no medicinal, there's no decriminalization here in New Hampshire.
So yes, that wasn't an option for her.
Correct.
And I think you told me on the phone how you did research and you found this and kind of explored it and realized, hey, wait a minute, this.
Exactly, yeah. What had happened with Liberty Herbal Incense is it wasn't anything to be named, it was just something that was working great for my wife. Eventually other people had found out, and people who have, brain cancer, PTSD, things of that nature, military friends of mine, ex-law enforcement friends of mine, active law enforcement friends of mine, who were looking for some sort of alternative to the pharmaceutical products that were causing bad side effects and things of that nature, being very expensive. So, incidentally, after circulating my findings and discovery for a while, it turns out that there was a market for it. And so, seeing an opportunity to help other people and at the same time restore freedom of choice, I wanted to be part of it.
Excellent. Can you kind of put that in? Okay, you need some more water?
Good for a moment.
Okay. Now, putting this in a time frame, when did all this happen for you? When did you start exploring this and and make the decision to?
Sure. I started my research into synthetic cannabinoid products back in 2005. Probably did about a 2-year trial and error run, utilizing some very good medical resources that I have in terms of friends and colleagues. And, you know, within probably, you know, trying to think of, in terms of timeline, from the time that I'd come up with a suitable product that was working for those that I love and trust, we were to market probably within 9 months after that. So we've pretty much been participating in the market since about 2007, 2008.
That's interesting, because like I said, when down in Louisiana, everybody talks about how this kind of exploded in 2009, 2010 or whatever. So this had been something that was there and flying under the radar. It appeared, so. Yeah,
I mean, synthetic cannabinoids have been around for 30 years. You know, a lot of people think this is a new thing, but synthetic cannabinoids have been around for a long time. In fact, Marinol is one of an FDA-approved synthetic cannabinoid that's been around since the early mid-70s. And so why it's being discovered now is because, well, we now have media attention, you know, and prior to that, this did exist as a self-regulated industry like it still does now, you know, without any harm or foul. And, you know, unfortunately now we have negative attention cast on us through, you know, selected facts, through legislative witch hunts, through overambitious legislators that are looking to pretty much get their legislative bill passage count up, you know, and it's unfortunate, and hopefully we can rally against that.
Well, and is that part of the issue here, the fact that all of a sudden you start throwing around the word cannabinoid, and I mean, is that an easy fear? I mean,
absolutely.
Put it out there, and
yeah. Well, you know, in my generation when I grew up, the war on drugs, you know, started to proliferate. So what had happened was we have this perfect storm where, you know, the government, looking to expand and looking to survive in itself, had identified some sort of cause that would be emotionally appealing to mothers, to parents in general. And, you know, hey, look, you know, we need to have a drug-free community. Now, if you look at the definition of a drug is anything that has a physiological effect when ingested. What is not a drug? You know, if you eat, do you have a physiological effect? Of course you do. You know, so to raise a drug-free community when the state is profiting from alcohol sales, tobacco sales, pharmaceutical sales, is just not relevant. It's never ever going to happen. You know, our society thrives off of drugs. Just take a look at our commercials. You know, you can clearly see that the American culture is drug-based. You know, and whether it be you know, energy drinks, whether it be coffee, you know, these things are going to be here.
Well, and as you pointed out in the hall too, I mean, they're being sold on store shelves. The state and the government's making money off of taxes on these products as well.
Exactly. Well, here's the big scheme of things: is that we have survived as an industry in the United States for at least the past 5 years under self-regulation, and very successfully. What we see now is the government, utilizing the media and utilizing the fear, is gathering all of this momentum to try to make us illegal. So, you know, we ask why. Well, we are the #1 incarcerating country in the world. If you took all the prison population of every single country, underdeveloped and overdeveloped countries, you would see that we rank to account for 75% of all incarcerated people. Now, we are the land of the free. So that's one interesting thing. But, you know, we've done a significant amount of research, and we almost want to believe that part of this, outside of legislators, you know, trying to get on the bandwagon of failed attempts, you know, jumping on the broken train of war on drugs, we tend to believe that there's some sort of anti-competitive aspect to this, because we've done some independent research over the past week, actually, and one of the reports we're about to release shows that just in point of sale taxes alone, the federal government has collected over $25 billion for 2011 alone. $25 billion just for point of sales. That's not accounting for employee taxes. It's not accounting for taxes on goods. It's not accounting for the regulatory taxes and licensing fees and regulations and so forth. So we happen to think that there's a lot of things working against us, and one of them is antitrust, anti-compete with the government, you know, with products that are addictive, with products that are readily available everywhere, and that the government does profit from. You know.
That's an interesting, that's a good argument.
Now to find that $25 billion number, you're not going to be able to Google it. We had to compile 17 different charts from the tax bureau, and it's not something that they want you to know. You know, and that's one of those things that you have to look into as a citizen and go, So here's a substance where, you know, has, you know, being alcohol is proven to be addictive. Alcohol is proven to have negative repercussions on your system. Yet, it's being profited by, you know, taxation in the state. So, you know, what's the real message here? That doesn't sound like, you know, it doesn't sound like freedom of choice. It sounds like a state-controlled list of things that are good, you know, that we're profiting from, and things that we can't control yet. So.
Now, one of the arguments that I would think would be put out for regulation at some level is, I don't know your manufacturing process, and I don't know how you go about distributing, but talking to law enforcement down in Louisiana, like I said, a lot of the problems they have are just these guys getting chemicals and mixing stuff up in their swimming pool, you know, in their little kiddie pool in the backyard, and selling the stores, and you don't know what you're getting, and you know, strength, power, whatever, risk, danger, any of that stuff. How, I mean, what's your feeling on that?
What we do with NAHITA is that we advocate for self-regulation. And part of that is developing industry standards which will protect the consumers and let them know, you know, at some point we would love to, as an industry, here's what's in your product, here's the strength, here's the potency, things of that nature. Unfortunately, every time that we try as an industry to disclose our ingredients, it becomes a legislative target. So, you know, we're kind of in a catch-22 in the industry where we would love to be more transparent to the public as part of our educational platform. However, because of legislative tactics and the government working outside of its scope, we're forced to, you know, keep things under wraps. And you know, ultimately, as an industry, we would love to be able to come out and be as transparent as possible, much like we're having this interview today. We want to educate the public. We want people to know what they do, what we do in terms of their manufacturing processes. And you know, a lot of us are, a lot of the manufacturers in the herbal incense trade are pursuing 9001, you know, ISO 9001 compliancy on their own. You know, my company, for instance, Liberty Herbal Incense, all of our packaging is professionally done. We have the strict quality control measures. We have, you know, individual batch testing at every level. And these are things that we advocate for others to do as well. Now, we're America. We have a long history of commerce. There's been a lot of things that have occurred since we started trading beaver skins for gold and so forth. But one thing that is undeniable is that the market knows how to take care of itself without government intervention. It's done so for 200 years prior to any of this. So as the market goes, you know, only things that are going to be value added are going to be supported. You know, so it really comes down to the consumers educating themselves.
And as far as industry standards and safety are concerned, you keep outlining this and keep pushing it underground.
Exactly.
The more dangerous it's liable to become.
Exactly. What we're finding out is that these prohibitive measures, outside of being unconstitutional, are having a reverse effect on exactly what they're trying to accomplish. Under the guise of public safety, prohibition says, well, we're the government, you know, and while we're not constitutionally able to without an amendment, we're going to go ahead and, you know, step on your rights because we want to keep you safe. Well, every time that they do that, what they're doing is they're only pushing the industry further underground. Right now, we're in an industry that is in the hands of responsible manufacturers at the major level, responsible distributors who are voluntarily complying with sales for 18 years or older, voluntarily labeling their products not for human consumption, and we're putting that product in the hands of retailers who are in your neighborhood, that understand your neighborhood, that have equity stake in the well-being of their market that they serve. And with prohibition, you know, we're not going to be able to have these people do this because, well, we're going to create a new class of criminals where none existed before. So now, instead of it being in the hands of tax-paying, job-creating small businesses in your area that have relations with the police, have relations with the community, We're going to take this substance and push it underground, you know, to somebody who's willing to incur the risk of breaking the law, you know, who's willing to incur the risk of selling to a minor, because they're just not going to care, and that is the undeniable force of the black market. So we're doing everything we can to prevent that. You know, prohibition is only going to push us the other way. It's expensive, it doesn't work, and it's a travesty against freedom of choice.
Yeah, that's great. And one of my questions was going to be, how do you regulate, how do you prevent selling to minors?
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that is an issue that you guys are.
Absolutely. In order for somebody to be a member of the North American Herbal License Trade Association, they are required to take a code of ethic pledge. And part of that pledge is making sure that we do not sell our products to minors. We do know that our products, if misused, can become a euphoric. And we want to make sure that people understand that we do not promote this to minors. You know, minors are not the target of our market. This is for the adult market. You know, the same market that alcohol and tobacco may serve. You know, and we voluntarily do that. We've been extremely successful. If there was a member of NAHITA that had sold any products to anybody under 18, they would be violating their terms of service for membership, and therefore, for all intents and purposes, be removed from our organization.
Excellent. Now, the question.
Hit me, Bernie. Bring it up.
I'm trying to figure out the way to say it. No, I mean, you talk about the comparison to alcohol, you talk about the comparison to prescription drugs, you talk about the comparison to marijuana, but then at the same token, the packages say not for human consumption.
Correct.
How do we?
Well, here's the thing, is that if herbal incense was designed to be for human consumption, then technically, through unconstitutional law, i.e. the 1985 Controlled Substance Act, the industry could fall subject under the federal analog laws. You know, thankfully, there is room there to allow us as an industry to participate in the free market. You know, and you know, I think in terms of the whole prohibition thing, the way that this whole thing works is that when you select the facts, you manipulate the truth. So what we see here and what we've been experiencing as an industry is, you know, kind of a witch hunt, you know, from the media and so forth. And, you know, well, we've had this many people, we've seen 380 people, you know, in our county go to the emergency room, we've seen this, we've seen that over herbal incense. Well, because our products are not for human consumption, a lot of times we say, look, you know, if you do accidentally, directly, you know, inhale any of this product, you should seek attention, you know, appropriately. You know, and there's always been minor instances of any product being misused, and then media exposure exposing how bad it is. But, you know, if we're going to go around and allow the government to legislate against any product that could be harmful if misused, there's not going to be any end. Where does it end? You know, there will be absolutely no conclusion of government rights. They will have full control over everything. You know, and it's easy to select facts. You know, take in point, last year, 386,000 people went to emergency rooms over dog bites. You know, over 800,000 people last year alone had to seek medical attention for dog bites. More than half children. You know, should we push for a ban on dogs? You know, it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So when you select these facts, it's very easy to make a case against, you know, an industry or a tool, instead of accepting the responsibility yourself, which is where really, you know, it comes down to be. It's really on, you know, and that's what we've forgotten as Americans.
Okay. Well, I guess my question for you as a spokesman for the association is, are these cannabinoids, are they not for human consumption? What is that line there? Define the product the way that. Absolutely.
Herbal incense products are an aromatherapy product that is to be used as a relaxant in open air environments. They're developed not for direct inhalation. However, if you go to the gas station, you know, you and I might ask for a gallon of gas, you know, whereas somebody else might ask for a gallon of house fire starter. You know, wherever the intent is for the consumer, there's a clear delineation from the manufacturer. You know, every day there are products that are misused. Just go on Google, you know, or go on YouTube, and you'll see people, you know, taking 2 liters of soda with candy and shaking it up and making bombs, you know. This is the society we live in. Nothing's ever going to change that. Nothing. So we either need to remember as Americans that we are responsible for our actions, and that the government's role is not to protect us, you know, from ourselves and our own personal choices, but instead to protect our freedoms, our social and economic freedoms, and that's why we're here as an organization to help with that.
Excellent. And do you, from year to year now, you first got involved in this in 2005, we're in 2012 now, I guess.
2012 already.
Yeah. How is the industry growing, not just financially, but numerically? I mean, are you seeing a lot, especially as we're starting to see more pushback from the government, from law enforcement?
Yeah.
Is the industry growing right now? Is it peaked? What do you see for the future?
Despite government regulations, we are seeing as an industry a continuous pattern of growth. And what's happening is that the smaller manufacturers that cannot keep up with the legislation are falling to the wayside, leaving room for the larger manufacturers like Liberty Herbal Incense to come in and basically maintain industry standards, keep the public aware and informed, and basically do a better job. So if there were any benefit that has come from, you know, the undue pressure and the unconstitutional measures that have been taken against the industry, it has been the fact that a lot of these smaller basement manufacturers have either gone to the wayside or have yielded way to, you know, responsible companies that are doing it right.
Excellent. And one of the key jobs I would imagine you have is informing and educating your members and telling them what's happening. And I know you've got the website, which it kind of seems like it's almost a daily update of the legal battles and everything.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit, I mean, explain what the purpose of your website is and how you go about educating and helping?
Absolutely. We here at NAHITA, let me try that again. We at NAHITA maintain a few resources to help with the cause. One of our main tools is www.keepitlegal.org, and that is a great reference for the public and for the membership to keep abreast as to what's going on in terms of legislative changes, attacks on freedom, and things of that nature. As an organization, we are always open at NAHITA to reaching out and going and traveling to communities, meeting with law enforcement, meeting with city managers, board of selectmen, and things of that nature, to educate them and say, look, you know, here's what you're hearing, here's what you should know, you know, and basically letting them know the more that you try to prohibit, you know, and influence the market unconstitutionally, the more cause you're gonna, the more harm you're gonna create, you know, from a social and economic standpoint. So, you know, we've traveled to, as an organization, we've traveled to many different cities, many different states. We've participated in legislative hearings at the committee level and so forth, all across the country. Just trying to educate people and making sure that they understand, here's what your government should be doing for you, here's what you should be doing for yourself.
How challenging is it to get, we'll start with law enforcement. How challenging is it to get the law enforcement to listen to your...
You know, we've actually been very successful working with law enforcement and legislators because myself, I do have a legal background in terms of legal studies. I also was a state-level law enforcement officer for 5 years. So this is an audience that normally would not probably listen to an organization such as ours. However, in my position where, you know, I've been state-level law enforcement, I am a parent, I am a Gulf War veteran. These are things that lend me their ears. You know, and thankfully, we've had great response from the community.
Well, I asked you out in the hall how you ended up at the front of the charge, and I mean, I guess it makes perfect sense when you put it that way. I mean, you seem like, I mean, that's the face to put out there.
Yeah, and you know, and it really, you know, I guess how would I say this? Becoming the president of NAHITA is definitely a honor, but it's definitely not a career path for me. I'm just happy to have the opportunity to work within our legislative process to help educate the public and you know, be a modern day patriot. You know, that's really what this is. This is, if you look at the foundation of our country, it started with a bunch of brewers that were underrepresented by their government or misrepresented by their government. You know, we're kind of seeing a return on that, you know, intellectual revolution today with our industry. In keeping up with this, getting back to your question, one of the most difficult things that we have to do as an organization is monitor 50 different states on a daily basis to find out how many different types of attacks we're going to have, what different ways are they going to try to attack us. We also monitor probably about 250 media organizations on a daily basis to see what the latest spin is. These are all efforts that we're taking, which we have to do, unfortunately. And the worst part about it is that this is time that otherwise we could be spending growing responsibly as an industry, spending time educating the public. These are the things that we want to do, but unfortunately because of unconstitutional legislation, we're stuck doing things that we have to do. And that's the most frustrating part.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about before too, is that it's not just that there's a law that you're trying to challenge or find a working agreement with. There's a million laws. I mean, every state has a different law. Like we said, we were down in Louisiana where these are basically considered now Schedule I drugs, and
Right.
and then here they're completely legal. If I could kind of have you explain, I mean, just how complicated that process is.
Absolutely.
Maybe even using that as an example. You've
Yeah.
got states where it's Schedule I, you got states where it seems like, I don't know if
Absolutely.
anything goes, but you know what
Right.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess our industry is in a strange paradigm where in one state, you know, you can be completely legal to participate in the free market, and maybe 500 miles in any direction, you would be locked up as a heroin dealer. You know, there's a lot of states that have made this a Schedule I offense, which is a lot more serious than, say, a marijuana crime. And this is all at a time where, you know, the nation's at war. We have a federal deficit that is completely out of control, yet this is where our state and federal legislators want to spend their time, is creating criminals where none existed before. So the biggest challenge that we have is trying to keep up with all of the motion legislatively. It's really a case of David and Goliath, you know, where you have this one little tiny, you know, microcosm of people in our organization really trying to monitor the world of media, the world of legislation. I mean, every year about 150,000 pieces of legislation are passed through this country for a proposal. Now maybe 1 or 2% might pass, but that's still 1,500 bills a year that are going to pass. And one of the things that we try to educate people on is that every time a law passes, it takes people, systems, and resources to enact and enforce. So when you call out for a law as a citizen, you're really asking for more, you know, taxes. You're asking for more government red tape. You're asking for bigger government and less freedom. You know, and that's the thing that people really have to identify with and come to terms with.
Yeah. Today is January 22nd, I believe. 23rd, 22nd, 23rd. We'll go 23rd.
Sure.
January 22nd and 23rd, 2012. By the time this show airs, I'm sure this is going to totally change. But can you tell me right now how many states this is legal in right now, or how many states you're fighting?
Yeah, I mean, currently right now, during this interview, most states have, well, no, that wouldn't be accurate. So far, to date, we've identified about 12 to 13 states that have been extra proactive in trying to shut down freedom of choice, extra proactive in working outside their constitutional scope. It's probably about 13 of them, 12 or 13 of them. By the time this airs, we don't know what's going to happen. Our biggest threat that we have right now is Senate Bill 605 that's been sponsored by Senator Grassley, which is the most atrocious bill that could possibly happen to freedom of choice in terms of, you know, everyday consumer rights. This is a bill, Senate Bill 605 is a bill that effectively doubles the DEA's power, effectively tries to wipe out anything that's a cannabimetric agent, you know, anything that would have an agonist response against CB1 and CB2. Now, the human body does contain over 30 endocannabinoids, which in point, you know, this bill may be interpreted to make it illegal to use part of your brain. You know, this is how far we've gone at a time when federal government is passing, you know, federal government has passed marijuana laws that the states are ignoring. You know, the federal government has made attempts to prohibit and control the market that the states are ignoring. We haven't had any proof that the war on drugs will ever and has ever worked, and it never will. You can't legislate goodwill. That only comes through education, and that's why organizations like NAHITA are very important to have around.
A lot of people, a lot of government agencies make a lot of money on the war on drugs, though.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you know, and that's a good point, you know. A lot of this comes down to a competitive thing. So if you look at alcohol, you look at tobacco, and you see that, you know, here are things that are generating billions and billions and billions of dollars, you know, virtually untraceable dollars for the government every year. It's really no wonder why the government would want to legislate against a product that is easy to manufacture, that is, you know, been highly accepted by the market, and that could compete with the products that they have on their approved list, you know. And honestly, you know, the bottom line is you cannot stop the market. The force of the market is undeniable. So the more you legislate, the further the market's going to go. And if it does get to the point where it becomes a black market option, herbal incense products will stay around. Herbal incense products are not going anywhere because they are undetectable without a lab test, you know, because there's no such thing as an incense sniffing dog. And these kind of things scare the government because they can't control this, you know. So it really comes down to, you know, what type of, you know, I would say this to a parent, you know, to a parent who's calling out for legislation because, you know, some of their children might have misused any product that has created harm, you know, unintendedly. I would say, look, what type of America do you want your children to live in? You know, you have to decide what type of America you want. Do you want a country for your children that provides opportunity and freedom of choice and advocates responsibly for their actions? Or do you want to live in a state-controlled environment? Do you want to live in a closed society? Is that the life that you want for your children? Because if that's so, then, you know, keep encouraging the government to grow. But if you want to believe in a land of opportunity, and you want to make sure that your children are in a position to succeed as Americans, as we have for the past 230 years, you know, you'll have to do a little research and find out that prohibition is not the way.
Well, for parents, just like keeping cigarettes out of your kids' hands or
Yeah.
your kids' hands, I mean, that's the parents'
Well,
responsibility.
you know, like we spoke with on the phone, you know, if you decide to go outside and it's raining, and you went outside without an umbrella and got wet, when you came back in, would you blame the sky for being wet? Now, most people logically would say, no, absolutely not. It's my responsibility. You know, however, you know, there is a culture, a media-driven culture in this society that says, you know, we need to blame things instead of ourselves. And a lot of people are, you know, I guess, how would I say this? Since the 1970s, we've seen a cultural trend in America for people to turn their backs on their own personal freedoms. And I think the reason why is because personal freedom equals responsibility. So instead of being responsible, people would be more willing to give up their freedoms if they can blame somebody else, if they can blame, you know, and rely on the government, and cry for regulation, which in itself has not succeeded in its merits. So I think that's all contributing factors to how we've gotten here.
Excellent. Before we talk about the politics and the legislation, I did kind of want to bounce back. I forgot to ask you this before, but going back to the product and safety. First of all, I mean, I guess when you look at it bottom line, there have been no overdoses associated with this, right?
Correct.
And that's kind of a key.
Yeah. You know, despite all the claims that you see in the media, despite all the claims that you've heard from the government, we have never, as an organization, received any clinical proof at all that there's been some sort of catastrophic event concerning herbal incense products that are directly related to herbal incense products. All of the instances that we've investigated that have been reported from the media that were accidents or some other things that's come from unintended misuse of our products in our industry have been attributed to other things like general substance use problems, general depression, you know, driving under, you know, intoxication, these types of things. So right now we have the government making a move against our industry with no clinical proof, with you know, nothing to back up any of their claims that, you know, cannabinoids have no medicinal properties. In fact, the government itself has a patent. The federal government has a patent on marijuana that it applied for in 2001, and was approved in 2003 to basically take marijuana off the market and corner the market to use marijuana for its antioxidant properties. You know, that flies in the face of the conventional argument that we hear from government saying that there's no medicinal, properties to cannabinoids. The federal government itself has a patent on marijuana. So, how does that work?
That's, yeah, I gotta do some research on that.
Take a look at our website. It's all right there, and it goes right to the U.S. Patent Office. It's right there. I have the number in my head somewhere, but it's long, the patent number.
Well, definitely. One of the things that, you see it in the media, you hear legislators and law enforcement talk about it, is the strength of these products being so much potentially stronger than a regular, than plant-grown marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So 60 to 80 times stronger or whatever. Is that something that, as the industry self-regulates itself, is that a concern that somebody, that could have a bigger impact on the safety of the product?
We've heard claims from law enforcement saying that synthetic cannabinoid products are more, potent than, say, natural grown alternatives. But again, our products are not for human consumption, so in order for them to proliferate as an aromatherapy product, they might need to be a little stronger. We haven't seen any direct impact or negative impacts of that type of potency strength with anything that's been used within its intended purposes. So basically it comes down to what we try to do as an industry is we try to not only, well, I'll start over with that. NAHITA does our best to, with the time that we have, I'll start over again.
Take your time.
Yeah. Despite all the effort and the tremendous effort that we have to spend in our resources to fighting for freedom of choice and keeping up with the legislation, we do still find time as an organization to put forward best practices for manufacturers in terms of potency, in terms of packaging, in terms of distributorship, in terms of point-of-sale retail. We have guides for point-of-sale retailers to help them identify the risks associated with misuse of our products and so forth. So we've done a considerable amount of work, even given the fact that we don't have any time left to do this because the legislative